You really changed the way that I did my grant making as program officer. And when I was the first program officer and the only program officer, that mean it impacted all of our grant making. And it lived in the organization also when we expanded and had more. The way we thought about our work was very much built around the practices that you had begun already living out at Grove. And that was based in trust. Even before I knew what trust-based philanthropy was, you were doing it, and you helped me bring it to Tara Health. And that was like the grant practice, that was the cultural piece. How do you define equity? I mean, we were talking about this before, like that was one of the values I think we connected on. But you helped me really define what it meant in my behavior. And as I was stepping into more leadership at Tara Health, having honestly, like your friendship and your trust alongside helping influence me gave me more confidence to be able to step into that more fully. And that was huge, so like we can't overstate the impact that you've had by any means. But I think the interesting through line is like you and I are both interested in not doing philanthropy for philanthropy's sake and doing it differently. And we're both at institutions that are interested in doing it that way, some louder than others. And how we've used our relationship to try to embody that. And that it's the relationship and the organic nature of how we came together that really changed the work itself, which resulted in us being changed, sounds like, and money flowing out the door more.
I came to philanthropy, not institutional philanthropy's greatest fan, both in terms of the accumulation of wealth, but also the effects on movement strategy. Having someone who shared my values, at least even some of them, was really helpful to me. I think that our relationship has changed my understanding of what is possible within philanthropy, or even just within my role. I can think of particular moments after the passage of Senate Bill 8 in Texas in 2021. And, that piece of legislation increased abortion restrictions, made it far riskier to be an abortion provider or anyone who
Supporting abortion.
Who supported abortion. And there's a lot of fear among funders about like potential penalties or risks for them. There are a lot of funder conversations. And I remember early on really wanting to have a conversation about abortion access and how people in the state were going to travel or do what they needed to do in order to get the care that they needed. And we ended up having a bunch of side conversations, both you and I, but also hosting a separate funder conversation, a smaller conversation, meaning with fewer funders. And
intimate.
Yeah. Yes. And I remember that we prepped for these funder calls. We sat down, we came up with strategies because other funders had asked how they could move money to abortion funds and had cited multiple risks and complications. These were usually larger foundations that had far more bureaucracy than I was accustomed to dealing with. And I remember that you and I sat down and worked through several strategies to really deliver. And my assumption then was we did all this work and the funders aren't going to move money to abortion funds. I kind of thought that the conversations that we had with those funders, like that was the end of that work that we had done together. Meanwhile, I mean, you and Tara quickly put together the Abortion Movement Fund with Amalgamated, put up a website, you opened the account, you did that so quickly. And donations came in from individuals, I believe, But also eventually, as you let me know, some of the funders that we had spoken to did end up providing some funding through the Abortion Movement Fund. Your work on that provided a vehicle for funders to move money for abortion access, resulting from those conversations we'd had. And I didn't believe that anything would come of those conversations, but you stuck with it and you created something that had the intended result, which was to move money for abortion access.
I think that's where we were a good partnership because, and we didn't even realize it at the time, but I just remember that time the bill was going to go into effect in like June or something. We had like 4 weeks and you were like, I'm going to move my money before the bill comes down so that all these organizations can have money in the bank. Then that whole question that funders are asking themselves about like, what's the risk to me to give to orgs in Texas if this bill is coming down and they're going to be liable? Am I going to be liable? Was a moot point, right? And so we did these funder conversations, and I think we're on a couple webinars to be like, move your money now. And I did that. So Tara Health, we moved our entire grant budget right before that bill came down that year. And I saw as we shared that story more, we could talk about how you pioneered that in some sense, and others started to follow suit. Like lots of people moved money quickly and started funding funds. So abortion funds, who traditionally only funded the actual abortion themselves, started to expand to include practical support, which is all the other stuff that someone needs to make it to their abortion appointment, like housing, transportation, childcare, food. And funders came in. Like they actually came in and funded that. And now, 3 years later, those foundations are still funding this work when they weren't before. But that was like our partnership. You know, we were able to put it together on one side on Tara, but you really modeled it first and foremost, and out of your own brilliance, really. So funders are moving more money now to practical support and abortion. And the Abortion Movement Fund, which you mentioned, is a donor-advised fund through Amalgamated Foundation. The idea we had, because we came up with that idea together, was that a donor-advised fund, which has a lot less strings, would do a lot of things for these organizations. One, it would provide cover for foundations. So they could give to a donor-advised fund very quickly, and it wouldn't be coming directly from them. We could pool that money together. Donor-advised funds have a quick turnaround. I think Amalgamated was like 2 weeks, which is why we wanted to go with them. Low paperwork, only requirement is they're a 501c3. And we wanted to take the burden off of grantees in that moment so that they didn't have to worry about, am I applying for money at this critical moment? You know, what, do I have to fill out all this paperwork? What's the process? That the process was basically non-existent through that mechanism. And we asked 2 movement leaders to really advise on that fund, to deploy it through their networks who were practical support leads. Then we sort of removed ourselves from the equation, which I think was how we started in our relationship, was what we started our conversation even today, is like, how did we not center ourselves or philanthropy with a capital P in this whole area of work and this whole process? And what we thought up with the Abortion Movement Fund felt like we were really putting that into action. You know, Tara Health started it, but like you were a huge part of that, and making sure that we could go as far to trust-based as we logistically could in that moment.